When the sun goes down and the moon comes up, my world comes to life.
Just gonna let the whole song play today.
I'm chasing her heart tonight.
Go with it. I'm dancing.
She makes the stars.
Hey, welcome to the Floor U podcast. I am Paul Pleshek, Executive Director of the National Association of Floor Covering Technicians, joined as always by the Black Belt of Bond, the Sultan of Stick, the Commander of Cohesion, the Guru, Sonny Callahan. Sonny, how you
Thank
doing?
you, sir. You've been thinking about that way too much.
Way too much. I got 30 more. I stopped at 4 today.
You stopped the music too early. I was dancing. I mean, I know it looked like I was having a seizure.
Yeah, well, that's why I stopped it. I was worried we were gonna have to call 911.
When I do it in public, people try to stick a belt in my mouth because they think I'm gonna bite my tongue off.
Yeah. So we are joined today, one of our founding members of the NAFCT, one of the first founding members of the NAFCT, Roppe Holding Company. The man, I'll say he's the man in charge. He'll probably correct that, but
definitely will correct that one.
Brent, Fike. Brent, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to be here. And I will add one to Mr. Callahan's legacy. He's Professional Lunch Eaters Man of the Year. So
that I am. Good call on that one. Yeah, glad to have you, man. Not only a work colleague, but a good friend. So I'm glad you're here, buddy.
Yeah, Sonny kept saying we should have you on, but he never said when.
Well, I was kind of wondering. I noticed it was episode 22, and I'm like, wow, it's 21 people ahead of me. That's awesome.
One of them was your wife.
Exactly, but hey, that's fine. I don't have to have the limelight as much as I used to. Sonny will tell you. Kind of maturity has its own rewards, I guess.
Well, we kept asking Rex Smallwood, and he didn't want to come, so we wanted Sexy Rexy.
There you go. One of the dynamic duo that I get to work with every day. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to somebody and they brought up Rex. I can't think of who it was. It was somebody this week. I'll have to remember that. I'll think of it during the podcast. But somebody said.
What's funny about Rex is not a lot of people in the industry know Rex, but those that know Rex absolutely just think the world of him because of his knowledge and his ability to explain things. And, I'm fortunate enough to have him as one of my closest friends as well. And honestly, you need to figure out a way to get him on here one day, just to have a little fun, even if he's a special guest for a short time frame. But he is a very knowledgeable individual. And as I like to say these days, he has a lot of common sense, and he's one of the superheroes with that superpower. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's kind of like why we haven't had Kevin on here is because we would need a translator.
Maybe you have Rex and Kevin together, and then nobody knows what anybody's talking about. I could check and see if Zoom has a setting for closed captioning.
Oh, that's a good call.
He wouldn't know what he was saying either.
Yeah.
Nothing against people from Alabama. Don't get mad.
Hey, I are one.
But I was gonna say, you know who you are though, so it's true. That's why it's funny.
You think they're really watching this kind of technology from Alabama?
Oh.
No, but they should be, Paul.
Paul Pleshek. That was Paul Pleshek said that.
I have some very good friends in Alabama, and I promise you they're not watching. Oh, we love Alabama. We got the best professional football team in the country.
That's right.
JV professional.
Oh no!
I'd love to see them play the Bucks or something one time. I think that would be great.
I've often thought the national.
Well, not this year. I bet they beat the Jets.
Just to see what happens.
They beat the Jets.
Do what, Brent?
I said, I've often thought the national champion should play the Super Bowl champion just to see what happens.
Yeah. Just
Yes.
to see. Just
Yeah.
for fun. I think there's a lot of NFL teams they could beat.
Well, at least we can talk about sports. Obviously, we sat down and Brent right away said, well, I'm not talking about COVID and I'm not talking about the election, so whatever.
So here you are talking about COVID and the election.
Yeah, and you had to bring it up.
I just like scaring people when it comes up. That's all. I like the look on your faces when I said it. And you're both like, oh, crap. He said the words.
Clinch. I had a little clinch.
You guys couldn't pass a pee right now.
Oh, I can't get out of my chair.
Too bad I wasn't sitting on a piece of coal.
So
I'd
Roppe
have a
Holding
diamond
Company,
right now.
for those that don't know, tell us what Roppe does. Tell us what you do and what your place in the industry is.
Well, for those of you who don't know who I am or kind of wondering who Brent Fike is with Roppe Holding Company, I've been with Roppe Holding Company, started out at a small company called Flexco, who's now a sister company to Roppe. But both of those corporations are owned by what is called Roppe Holding Company. So if you're not familiar with that, Roppe Holding Company is a family-owned business owned by a gentleman in Fostoria, Ohio by the name of Don Miller. He is mid-80s, still comes to the office every day, full of energy, just a real spitfire to be around. The only negative thing about him is he loves Ohio State football, so we get to argue about that a little bit. But we are what I would say one of the few family-owned businesses still left in this industry. It's become a running joke at some of our meetings. Is the opening line is we're still not for sale, and in this industry today, being a family-owned business has its own challenges and it has its own issues. But man, the rewards are just so great. I get to work with a lot of people around the country on these brands of Roppe and Flexco and emerging brands such as 6 Degrees and Seneca, Flash Cove that are out there every day working on these commercial job sites and being involved and producing products that are going into different segments and around the world. Actually, you got to view an installation yesterday from Qatar with Toughflex. So one of our sports flooring products. So, doing those kind of things and being in my role of general manager of technical puts me in an environment where I deal with a little bit with installation, a lot with maintenance, a lot with technical documents, issues on job sites, claims, complaints, sales meetings. Actually get to be a part of each and every little segment of our industry. And it actually has given me a lot of experiences, but it's also given me a lot of life lessons, so to speak. And those are the ones that you learn, and those different things that you sometimes learn on the fly or you learn through hardships. But our company is stayed strong and stable through, I guess, as Paul wants to talk about COVID and the election and everything else. But we're sitting here in a very good position to move forward with whichever direction it goes, and we're hoping it's positive. We've got our plan in place and working our plan to get to where we want to be as a family-owned business in this industry that's basically populated with flooring mega giants or flooring giants or mega corporations, whatever you want to call them. Companies that are a lot bigger than we are. But, my role allows me to have interaction, like I said, with each or every level of the industry. But by far, one of the biggest things that I enjoy doing is listening or looking for information on job sites and helping to understand what's happening and scenarios that are going on and finding solutions or providing solutions to cause or help those issues go away. A lot of times it's not popular. A lot of times, I'm able to help people out when nobody else will. But hey, it's what keeps me going and getting up, coming to work every day. And then, of course, outside of work, I love to eat, love to watch football, love my family. Not in any particular order. That's not, if you're listening out there, that's not 1, 2, and 3. But I'm fortunate enough that I get a good, stable environment to go home to as well. So,
well, I don't understand why you have to rank those things, because I usually eat while I'm watching football. So, I don't know.
With the family, right? Yeah. So, speaking of, tonight's movie night, so we'll have, good food and movie treats and sit down and watch who knows what. So,
well, Lombardi said, what did he say? God, family, football, not necessarily in that order. So,
who is this Lombardi you speak of? Is that?
Oh, I thought you were a football. You must be talking about soccer. Okay, I apologize. Oh boy.
Well, in the words, if you're going to talk about coaches, that's the last thing I'll say about sports. In the words of Bear Bryant, I ain't never been nothing but a winner. So.
Yeah, that's it.
In the words of Vince Lombardi, winning's not the only thing. Yeah, it is. Winning's not everything, it's the only thing.
There you go.
Yeah, that's it. Well, going back to you, Brent, most people know I had a position with my former company really similar to yours. And one thing that I like what you said is you're kind of a liaison. You work with the installer, you work with flooring contractors, then you go back to your technical team and tell them what you learned. Then you talk with R&D, because R&D and technical don't always speak the same language. And when you clear R&D, then you got to go to production. Production speaks their entirely different language. So I see what you're saying, because you get it from all aspects of the industry. And sometimes when that contractor asks you to do something, come in and be a savior, what I respect you for, sometimes you tell them no. Sometimes it just can't be done. And too many times people in the industry, they just say, okay, we'll try this and, we'll hope it works. But sometimes you just got to say, no, it won't work. So.
Yeah. And one of the things that, as you mentioned, one of the worst parts of my job is having to look at dollars and cents when it comes to an issue. And you can't just look at an issue and say, yeah, I'm going to help you here because it's $2,000 and I'm not, because this one's $100,000. Those issues, and it seems like recently the issues seem to be getting bigger. And I can understand, how all of that plays with cost of materials, cost of labor, things like that's going on. But, you want to look at every situation as close to the same way as you looked at the last one. And, you have to evaluate the situation, what's actually taking place. But in order to do that, you have to have that relationship with both sides, manufacturing and flooring contractors, and sometimes even distributors, to understand that they understand how things are supposed to work. Like I said, we're manufacturing products under several different brand names. Doesn't mean they're different. Doesn't mean they're always the same either. But having an understanding how formulations play a role in the performance, having that understanding of how a production process plays a role in that formulation, playing a role in that performance, and then pairing it with the job site conditions and putting it in the right conditions to make sure that it is set up for success. There's a lot of players involved. And if anyone through that whole thing makes one little mistake, it's a ripple. More recently, we've started referring to them as dominoes. Is once that one domino falls, if you don't pull the next 2 or 3 dominoes quickly to keep it from collapsing everything, they're all going down. And when that happens, there's really nothing anybody can do but get hurt feelings. And a lot of times that's how we look at things. And, one of the things that I've always tried to do when it comes to job sites, or, we've always looked at it. I say we. This is a principle that comes from our owner, Don Miller. Like I said, he's been around for a long time. He's built this company from where it was. He's been in the industry 65 years. And, you know, he built our company on honor and integrity and doing the right thing. And, you know, when we look at an issue, one of the things that we always look at and evaluate is our product right? Because there's no sense pointing a finger at an installer when you have incorrect product, because that does nothing to build a relationship.
Right. That doesn't help anything.
You know, one of the things that I learned as an early age, I grew up in Northwest Alabama. We're making fun of Alabama, but that's home. Currently now reside, you know, northwest of Detroit, and love it up here. But one of the things
you're 0 for 2.
Yeah. Well, 0 for 2. One of the things that I learned, you know, at an early age is, you know, you treat people the way you want to be treated, and respect is earned, not given. You know, those kind of things. And so, you know, we look at those things when we're trying to evaluate those concerns to ensure that we're trying to be as honest and upfront as we can. So, you know, a lot of times you get the opportunity, as we said earlier, to help somebody out and do things and you know, but it's an interesting time that we find ourselves in these days. And I'm sure as we go through this conversation today, we'll talk about that in great detail.
Yeah, what you were saying about, you know, doing the right thing and taking care of your customers, I can relate to that as far as not that it can't be done in a corporate environment, but when it's a privately held company, it's a lot easier. And they seem to take it, in my experience, they seem to take it a little bit more serious. So when I worked for, I guess I can say it because they're not around anymore. When I worked for Parachem, Mr. Jordan owned the company. And if I said, hey, Mr. Jordan, this product was defective and it's 15,000 square feet, he goes, go make it right. You know, there wasn't a 10-step process to find out what was going on. Of course, we'd run it through R&D. Of course, we'd run it through production, and we confirmed that was it. But it just seems when it's privately held, it's a little bit easier to be like, yeah, let's just go do it. And it's a little bit more personal because they want to make sure it's their name, it's their reputation, their legacy. So, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, and, you know, and with all the positives that brings, there's also some drawbacks to that as well, because, you know, not to say that this happens, but it's so easy to have that moniker of, oh yeah, you know, if there's an issue, they'll take care of it. And so you end up starting to pick through the weeds to realize that, hey, this is really not our issue. So to say it bluntly, sometimes you feel like you start to get taken advantage of.
Right.
You know, where you have a situation and something may be going on or something may be happening. And as you start to pick through the details 3 and 4 weeks after something comes up, you learn a what would be a major detail to you was a minor thing to them. Oh yeah, we forgot to mention that this corner of the building we were working in, you know, the glazing wasn't in, or there was no windows, or, you know, whatever. So, you know, and a lot of times people don't understand how that directly affects the products and that it directly affects them differently.
Well, and there's an assumption, if there's an assumption there that the manufacturer is going to take care of it, and it happens too often, there's also a tipping point where they're like, well, they can be, let's just put this in, whatever happens, they'll take care of it and we don't have to worry about it, instead of trying to stick up for the right thing. So there is a tipping point there. If a manufacturer takes care of things every time, all the time, then you start feeling like you don't have to go through your requirements and try to do the job right, because who cares? I'll keep my customer happy, and then at the end of the day, they'll give me new flooring if it fails.
Yeah, and I think a couple of things changed back in, you know, 2007 to 2010 during that recession. 2 things changed really. One, for manufacturers, our ability to give these customer accommodations were nipped in the bud, right? I mean, money was tight. We were trying to stay open, trying not to lay people off. And conversely, contractors who, when they would have a $300, $400, $1,000, $2,000 claim, where previously they would just let it go and fix it themselves, they were turning in everything. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. And I think it really changed the way claims are processed and how a technical team, answers those requests.
Yeah, so you're exactly right, and that's been the thing here lately, and it's not so much been since March. We know everything happened, right around the middle of March, and actually, I think one of the last times I traveled, Sonny, you and I were together, and that's what a lot of times since then, we went through a stretch where April, May, June, July, August was, needless to say, slow, but it was slow when it comes to issues, concerns, complaints, things like that, just because people weren't on job sites. But as they started getting back in September, October, early November, especially, you're exactly right. Things that would never have been an issue last year or the year before are all of a sudden hot button issues. And hey, you got to fix this, or I'm going to lose this customer and I'm going to quit buying from you, kind of a thing. And I'm like, okay, sometimes you just want to say, okay, and because I know this person, being in this industry too, as big as it is, it's also small. And what a lot of times what installers don't understand is not necessarily sales management, but people in our side of the business, that technical, installation, training, maintenance, those kind of things, we all know each other.
Yeah.
And the fortunate thing is, honestly, we pretty much all like each other. And so we talk, so we have daily conversations. And I think, Sonny mentioned it earlier. Sonny and I consider Sonny one of my close friends, and we have a group that texts regularly. Without that group, I don't think I could have made it through the last months, 9 months of work a lot of times.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. And what that gives us, though, is a network to help deal with some of these issues. And even more than that, is it gives us the opportunity to create and promote consistency in the industry. And so by having those relationships, I'll say it here, by NAFCT, by the goal and vision of this organization, is to provide at least a consistent set of measures to begin training people, so that you at least get a foundational guideline of what is expected of you when you go to a job site to do an installation.
One of the things I like about this conversation, as regards to the NAFCT, is that listening to you two talk, being technical reps, as a career or history of being technical rep, we set up the organization. We didn't go to the CEOs. If you look at the board of directors, it's technical reps. And one of the things we're trying to show installers, especially with that, is that technical reps are the go-between in a lot of ways between the manufacturing and installation, and come from installation more often than not, and understand the issues that the installer faces every day, and the places where that installer can say no, can't say no, should say no, I'm not putting it in, it's not ready. How do we get installers to understand that line better, and how do we get the industry to understand when things go in, when they shouldn't go in? And
well, that's a loaded question.
Well, thank you.
Honestly, there are several things that installers can do. And I'm going to also throw it out that there's a couple of things that manufacturers and technical reps and whoever's writing documentation can do.
Project managers.
Yeah. The number one thing that needs to happen is they don't need to be afraid to pick up the phone and have a conversation. So much so today, conversations happen via text message. They happen via email. And I'm saying there's times I need to pick up the phone as well. But so many times things get lost in translation, and they don't understand maybe the importance or something, or they just don't understand something. as we were talking prior to the recording started, I had a conversation several months ago with an installer on a job site. And, I walked onto the job. I had the PDF of the installation instructions opened on my phone. And I'm talking to the guy and I said, look, it says right here, this is what you need to do. Well, y'all just write that so that you can point out what I'm doing wrong and get out of the job. And, I'm like, yeah, you can look at it that way. We write that because it's what we expect you to do. And, well, why do you expect us to do that? Because that's how the product is designed to work.
Right. Well, take it the other way. Take it the other way and don't put those installation instructions on there. And then the floor fails. They're going to still come back to you.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because you didn't tell us how to do it. There's been a number of times, guys, this is the old joke in the industry. There's a number of times where you have an issue, get a phone call from a guy and you answer on the other end. Hey, how you doing? I got a problem with your glue on this job. Okay, what's happening? Well, it's just not working. Well, what'd you do? And you see him, on the other end of the phone, he's got the bucket in his hand and reading the label as to describe to you exactly what he did during his installation.
Why has it got to be glue?
Yeah.
Why has it got to be glue?
It doesn't. Well, that's just primarily where we have the issue. And it could be an absorption or porosity issue, or, as we're learning now, it could be dew point, as Sonny loves to talk about. All these other things that are going on that can cause that to happen. It's always, hey, and don't take this the wrong way. All of you installers out there listening, I love you. I'll give you my phone number. Call me. We'll have the conversation. I've been doing this for 30 years. Never seen this happen before. And you talk to the guy and he's 27 years old, and that's an extreme event. But, go back to what I was talking about earlier, an open line of effective, honest communication would solve a whole lot of problems on job sites. Whole lot of problems.
And I think we've talked a little bit about this before, but that's really one of the goals for NAFCT that I see in my mind. And by the way, Paul knows this, but NAFCT was really created because of our group text. Our guys that are on there, we felt the responsibility that we are able to make a difference, then we should make a difference. So that's why we did it. But going back to what we were talking about, one thing that I don't think installers really understand when they get to a job site, as far as is it ready or not ready, they don't understand what happens before them. So if you get to the grassroots level, what's happening before them? How do you know it's ready for the flooring guys? And then the flooring guys don't understand what happens after them to make sure they've done their job to be ready for the next crew that comes in, be it trim or doors or whatever. But and I think that's a big disconnect between different trades in our industry. Now, will we ever be able to solve that? I doubt it, but I think we could do something to make it better, because you got to understand. I just had this conversation. Social media, again, I wrote that story on social media, gets me every time I get worked up. But it was somebody had posted a picture. There was paint all over the floor. And so I just made some guidance. I wasn't critical. I just said, this is something you should do. You should really get that paint off, because when you put a non-porous flooring on there, the moisture vapors come up and it can cause that paint to release. They literally got mad at me for saying that. We scraped it. We got everything loose. It's done. And if you're listening, I promise I'm not being critical of you, but if I can help you do your job better, I'd be remiss if I don't tell you. Right.
Right.
So I'm sorry if you get mad, but I promise you, I'm not trying to be critiquing. I'm trying to save you so that when it happens on a big job, because this was multifamily, and they come back to you and say, okay, there's a problem with these units, and you come to the manufacturer of the flooring or the adhesive, they're going to pull it up and they're going to go, okay, I'll see you later. And they're going to walk.
Right.
There's not going to be a negotiation. There's not going to be any discussion about what we can do. We talked about it earlier, that the sales concession for an installer doing something as blatantly incorrect as that, the adhesive guy and the flooring guy is going to walk away. And that's what we've got to train our installers to make sure they understand, that it's the little things that they do that can cost them money. And I was telling Paul the other day, I was trying to put the words together, and I still haven't done it right. You know, it's something to the effect of, it's never too early to learn how to do it right, but it can be too late, right? You can learn too late and be out of business. I've seen it happen.
Yep.
Right. So I think you can see I'm a little passionate about that. I think that if we can help our installers, our fellow installers, we need to do it. And we're not necessarily being critical, we're being helpful. And there's a big difference between the two.
Yeah, I go back to a conversation we had. I'm going to say early October 2017, Sheraton Ballroom in Columbus, Ohio, Sonny. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And the whole theme behind that is not that we know everything, because God knows I learn something every day, and the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know.
Right.
But there are a lot of times that installers take on responsibilities when the unknown is far greater than the risk they ever really want to take.
Right.
And, I know when you start talking about some of these large contractor groups and organizations around the country, and there is a bunch of them, and there's a bunch of good ones. Even the good ones take on risk and responsibility that I just shake my head at sometimes. It's
Right.
like, I do not know that I could do that side of the business every day and keep hair. But,
Keep what?
hair. Yeah. Hey, cue ball. But when you look at it from that standpoint, we want to talk about documentation and a comment that Sonny made about the paint. It's in every flooring manufacturer's documentation.
And where did it come from? Where did it come from?
It come from failures.
No. Where does the paint statement come from?
ASTM F710. Yeah, it comes from F710, but it was written into F710 due to failures.
Right. That's why
laugh.
we all put it in there, because it comes from 710.
Yeah, and we look at it from a standpoint, and the reason we put it in our documents is installers don't know ASTM F710. And at a minimum, those are there. And we were talking before we started this recording. In our days of travel, guys, we see it all. We see a lot. I remember sitting in a hotel room, brushing my teeth in the bathroom, looking over in the corner by the shower and seeing reverse numbers written on the floor. And I'm like, what in the world? And it hit me. That's my room number. So, somebody somewhere got up a bunch of sheet vinyl for a hotel and wrote the room number on the back in a Sharpie. And the next thing you know, 2 years later, it's transferred in reverse on the top. And And that happens with paint. It bleeds through or it releases, but all of that stuff is there to promote a successful job. And I'm going to take a moment to get on the ASTM bandwagon. Sonny and I are both heavily involved in FO6, which is the flooring standards or installation standards and testing for resilient products with ASTM. Most flooring contractors do not realize or understand they can be a member and be active in those standards developments as well. So they do have a voice. They're just not taking that voice. And, we're
$75 a year. That's
$75 a year. Exactly.
Yeah.
And with that money, you can get you can get access to a volume of standards that'll give you every one of these that we talk about in all of our documentation.
Like $8,000 worth of standards at $40 a piece, 200 some standards in that division.
So
and that's something that Paul is going to really get involved in moving forward. Obviously, November meeting was just canceled. We got notification. But, what Paul's role is going to be, he's going to be there as an advocate for installers. Not that manufacturers do anything that's unethical, right? But if there's a side to the manufacturer or a side to the installer, they're going to side to themselves, right? That's human nature, okay? Adhesive, underlayment, flooring, whatever. So we need to have advocates for installers in these committees, right? And all these groups that we have. So
yeah. And I think we were going back a little bit, not to sidestep that, but we've had a lot of conversations about ASTM, of course. But the ability to, with job stops, I think one of the places that we're really going to work hard on is that education's always looked at teaching somebody what they have to do, but you can't explain it to your contract, to the general contractor or the homeowner or the business, why you have to stop if you don't understand why those rules are in place. What's going to happen if they're not followed? We need the installers to an extent to become teachers, that they have to understand what they have to do, what the rules are, and why those rules are in place. Because if you just say your building's not warm enough, I can't install the flooring right now because that's what the installation instructions state, then that falls on deaf ears. But if you say I can't, if the building's too cold, the relative humidity and the dew point of the slab means that we will get water in the adhesive if we put this floor down right now, goes a lot further than that general contractor saying, oh, okay, so this isn't just an arbitrary rule. There's actually reasoning behind it. I think
Not
that's
what you're doing, but why.
Right.
Not what you're doing, but why. And we talk a lot about that, Paul and I do. Why are you doing it? But communication for installers, that's something they should be working on all the time. It's key.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've been working on this week, honestly, is taking documentation that is present and trying to put back in a lot of, simple explanation. Because that document is there for that installer to give to the project manager, or the project manager to review and give to the installer, but also to take to the general contractor and say, hey, this is what I need. It's in my contract to do it right, because God knows we don't have time to do it right sometimes, so we have time to do it twice. This is what I need to get it right. And one of the best examples I can give of that in a relationship is being on a job site where we're having conversations and again, throwing out the reality of what's going on. Well, hey, I acclimated this product into this room, and, it was in the room for 4 days and everything was great, and we installed it, and now look at it. Well, how did you acclimate it? Well, it was in the room, window was open, it was 90 degrees in the summertime. Well, okay, the windows are closed now and it's 50 in here, and the heat and air is over in the box sitting in the corner, still there. How was this acclimated? Because your temperature is 40 degrees cooler now than it was then. And understanding the product and understanding the fact that one of the hottest products on the market right now, I don't want to use the word unstable, but it reacts to temperature change. It can be dimensionally stable and still react to temperature change.
Sure. I mean, a lot of flooring is.
And the shortcut is, I want to use this adhesive to install it because it's easy and it produces productivity on the job, because I can spread several thousand feet. I can lay it and I can get off of it, because guess what? My job's behind 8 weeks.
I had a job like that for an inspection, and it was vinyl plank. The whole room was installed, and asked about acclimation, and they looked at me and said, oh yeah, all the furnaces, everything was in when we put the flooring in. Went into the furnace room and the flooring was installed underneath the HVAC room.
Yeah. Well, not only that, and going back to what, Sonny says is another one of the things that's in everybody's documentation, understanding how your role affects the next guy, or how the previous role affects you. In everybody's documentation, it says, allow all other trades to finish before you start installing.
Right.
How does that happen on a job site that's 8 months or 8 weeks or 2 years behind, when the flooring guy is in there installing right after the lighting and the ceiling guy is finishing up, and then right behind him a plumber's coming through to fix a leak or putting covers on electrical outlets and things like that? Well, I know plumbers don't do that, but electricians finishing up their stuff,
they suck.
Everything's happening at one time. I've been on job sites in a large room, and every trade that's on that job is working in that one room as the installer's trying to install it.
What other finished trade has to put up with moving scaffolding, moving ladders, people working on top of them, having to fix the floor, Does a painter fix the drywall? You ever seen that? It never happens, right? How did floor covering installers get pushed down? And I know the answer to it is because they're treated as a laborer. They're not treated as a certified installer who has a specific set of skills to do something. And that's what we really got to focus on to get it to where people know to get the floor ready for us.
Right.
And we've watered it down.
And a lot of times too, we get asked the question and the installer wants to know, well, why is this my fault? Well, it's your fault simply because a lot of times you just accept it as it's ready for you to go. And in the eyes of a lot of people, if you install over it, you accept it. It's ready.
You're accepting the liability. Yep.
Yeah. And that's the part is like, and I will say this, there are a lot of times that nothing ever happens. We sell a lot of material that goes down, a lot of installs happen this very same way. And, there are no issues. But when the one fails, it's like, oh, we can't believe this is happening. And it has the chance of happening every day, and it just doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, what's the story we get every day, Brent? That's the way I've been doing it for 15 years.
Yep.
Well, for one, flooring has changed in 15 years. So is the adhesive.
But
true. Two, if you've been doing it like this for 15 years, go buy yourself a lottery ticket because you're the luckiest son of a bitch I've ever met in my life. And I've used that on a job site. Yep. It makes them mad, but I'm trying to make a point across. There's no way you're doing it like this, right? You've got to do it the right way or it's going to fail. Certain things. Because usually it's not just one thing that fails that causes a flooring failure or one thing being out of spec. Usually it's 2, 3, 4 things out of spec coming together that causes a failure.
Yeah. And I think we mentioned it either off air or as the recording was going about the dominoes. Once one domino falls, it usually brings out 3 or 4 other things that are contributing to that issue. And one of the guys in our industry who is an inspector, he always uses a line that the flooring never lies. The evidence never lies. The flooring never lies. The adhesive never lies. That always tells the story. It's just a lot of times as to what extent a manufacturer or somebody goes to the extent of determining what that true story is, and sometimes the harder you're pushed back on, or sometimes the more false information you receive, the harder you dig to find something that's, to put the blame somewhere else. And honestly, we don't want it to be that way. I had a great conversation earlier this week with a gentleman who's been in our industry for a long time. And I will not mention his name, but guys, I'm talking to him about NAFCT. So he and I were having a conversation, and it brought up the whole thing about moisture. Why is a flooring manufacturer having to specify a moisture limitation? And I don't want to go down that road because that's a rabbit hole for another day. But the reality is we've had to take that responsibility because no one else would. But the reality of that story is that's a black hole. The more you learn about moisture and effects, the more you realize that nobody really truly knows. It's all of, well, I think this or I think that. And there's a lot of brilliant minds that have weighed in on this subject. And it's one of those things. It's like there's always something on a job site that is out there to get a manufacturer or an installer. And a lot of times the installer just not being prepared for it is what creates the scenario.
But to go with that and not to drag you into a rabbit hole, there's natural law. Thermodynamics are natural law, right? You've got dew point is natural law. You can't change the fact that at certain points, moisture in the air condensates. At certain temperatures, things expand and contract. It's not limited to flooring. It's not limited to any industry. It affects us in daily life. When you set your beer down on your wife's new coffee table and it gets that ring around it and you get screamed at, you can't change it. You can do something different to deal with it, put a coaster down and hopefully stay married. But, there is just simply natural law that has to be dealt with. There's no way around dew point. There's no way around thermodynamics. And
Yeah.
if it's your product, you're the one that has to say, this is what we make. This is rubber. This is vinyl. These are the thermodynamic properties with that material. Here's how you have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I go back to a path I started down a while ago, a job site that we were on and had a small issue, and having an offline conversation with owner or principal of that flooring contractor. You know, he calls me up and he says, "Hey, you got to help me out." And I said, "Okay, what do you need?" "Well, in your documentation, you say this: job site must be maintained 65 to 85 degrees, you know, blah, blah, blah." He said, "Would you believe me if I told you that a certain percentage of the month that can take place in my climate without any permanent HVAC?" And I said, "Yeah, I believe you." And he said, what would you tell me would happen if I saw that temperature swing on a daily basis throughout my job site, but I was within that range? Well, I will tell you that you're going to experience kind of what you experienced on this job, just because of what Paul just said. The laws of thermodynamics, you can't, you can't change them.
You can't go from 80 to 60 and not expect it to not do anything.
Right.
Or 80
And
to 65.
So what that did to us was signify that, hey, we've got to take a very important stance on this. We've got to change the verbiage to get it to a point where they have the, and his comment to me was, if it was in your documentation that it has to be maintained at a constant temperature, somewhere between that range, doesn't matter if it's 65 or 85, but a constant temperature within 3 to 4 degrees. He said, that gives me something to go to the general contractor and say, look, I can't do it unless you accept responsibility until it's within these requirements. And, you know, we started looking at that, and I started having conversations with a lot of my peers, and most of them agreed with me. The ones who have had the ability to make those changes, I think, have made those changes. You know, some of our companies are technical driven, some are manufacturing, some are marketing driven. And so, you know, unfortunately, marketing driven companies, a lot of times it plays a role in installation instructions, how they get written, because you don't want to not sell product. Sorry for the facial expressions there, but you know, that's the thing is you have to a lot of times view all of the areas of this industry to understand what you can and can't say and how you say it. I could write a 13-page document on what not to do with our products, but if certain people got their hands on it, they wouldn't buy that product because
They would never,
the product next door over here, it's the same thing, but you don't have all these limitations.
Yeah.
Their product will respond the exact same way on that job site. It's just what they want you to know and what they want you to understand.
Yeah. And I can give you an adhesive that will never fail. Absolutely never fail. But you can't afford it. You wouldn't do it on every job because it costs too much.
Yep.
So,
well, and with installation instructions and with warranties, words have meanings, and you have to read them for understanding. Unfortunately, too often people are reading instructions to get out of something or find a loophole instead of reading to try to understand what it means, right?
Exactly. And hey, here's a perfect example of that. When I write a document, Word, of course, has the whatever the thing's called, the reading grade level ability to tell you what grade level it is, right? I shoot for a 10th to 11th grade level. And that's not a knock. To me, that makes it easy to understand.
Sounds high.
Well, it probably is, but the point I'm trying to make is looking at some of the ballots that were on some of the states during the election, some of the amendments, they're written at a grade level 27, 28. And we wonder, you know, a lot of times it's the flow of information. If the information is easier to obtain, does that make it easier for people to want to obtain it? And so, you know, that goes back to what I was saying earlier, is having that relationship with an installer. I know guys that'll pick up the phone and call me and we talk about issues, and you know what? I never get claims from those guys. It's the ones that you never see, that you never talk to,
Right.
that end up having the issues,
Well,
and you can pretty much talk to a guy on a job and understand where he's coming from, and tell whether he really wants to do the right thing. And most people want to do the right thing. They just are allowing themselves to be forced into doing something they know is not right.
To add on to what you were saying about the writing, and I said it sounded high. It's not really a matter of me saying that people are don't have the intelligence to read, but we've become a society where we don't read. And to reinforce that, one of our professors on the board, we've had a discussion about their online training and so forth. And he puts manuals on there and says flat out that even in that college level, nobody wants to read anymore. They're watching videos, they're watching things, they're not reading about what the class is. And reading materials, even at a college level, are starting to become very, well, I'll just say less common. That they have to have a presentation, they have to have an online source for the information, because the students aren't reading the manuals anymore.
Physical books. Yeah.
They want to read 140 characters or less and take it for the gospel. Sorry,
The world according to Twitter, is that what you're saying?
Hey, be careful, you'll get censored.
Oh boy.
We're all going to be in trouble after this one. Y'all realize that, right? You can't cut that out in post-production, right?
No, well.
He doesn't know what an edit button is. No.
Nobody will see it where if it gets censored anyway. It's okay. But we got a couple minutes left here. You know what? I think we should save the installer shortage, or the existence or not of the installer shortage, for the next time. I think.
Yeah.
Well, let me say this. Let me say this about the installer shortage. If somebody out there is listening to this podcast and knows somebody who they think would make a good installer, the one message that I want you to take away from me is this is a lucrative industry if you care about it. You can make whatever you want to make in this industry if you're willing to work hard, do it, and learn how to do it right. You can stay in installation, you can go to project management, you can own your own business, you can work for a manufacturer, you can work for a distributor. There's so many avenues in this industry that you can go if you just want to. And that's the thing that I think is we've all said it and we've all heard it, is there's not enough people that thinks this is a sexy industry. It's not sexy. It's hard work. It's dirty a lot of times.
Blue collar. It's blue collar.
Exactly. It is blue collar, but if you're willing to put the work in, you can make a really, really, really good living. And I know as we're going through this and doing this, it just amazes me a lot of times that we don't talk about what we do enough, because a lot of times I think people are just saying, well, I work in flooring. Well, the people that I talk to about flooring, it's like, wow, you really make it sound like it's great. And to me, it is. I love what I do.
Yeah.
I get frustrated just like the next guy. I ask my wife, there's times I walk out of this office and just shake my head and just go outside and just walk around, sit on a rock. I got a rock out front I call my thinking rock, and it's like, I have to go out there and just get away from it because it agitates me. But it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding. And if you're passionate about it, man, it's an awesome industry to be in. A lot of great.
Look at me. Look at me. For anybody listening, I started as a helper in 1990, as a helper in Orlando, and now I own my own.
30 years.
Do what?
You have been doing it 30 years.
I'm right. I don't tell people that because then you sound like a fibber. That's the cutoff, right? I've been doing this 30 years. You're a liar. I'm leaving. You're not listening.
Right.
But
he's not 27. He's 32. So
yeah, I'm 30. I'm 28. So, but I mean, look at me now. I own my own adhesive manufacturing company, right? you could do anything you want in this industry. And I've done just about everything. The only thing I wasn't was a distributor rep, but a manufacturer's rep, a technical rep, a sales rep, project manager. I just had to find the one that I like. And I just so happen to like adhesives. I don't know why, but I've been doing it for the last 16 years now and I enjoy it. Just, anything you want to do, if you have that installation background, you're ahead of the game with anybody else. Yep. Right? Anybody else who wants that job in flooring, you've got an advantage over them because you understand installation.
Yep. That's exactly right. The last 4 years, I've had an opportunity to work with a couple of guys that probably never would have gotten an opportunity to work with in my position if I hadn't have been part of some of these groups and some other things. And one of those guys who's also on the board of directors for NAFCT, hands down, probably one of the best guys you'll ever meet, but also one of the best installers you'll ever talk to.
I know you don't. Yep.
When you sit down and talk about installation to this guy, and he's taught me so much over the years, just talking to him. And I'm glad I have his phone number. I can pick up the phone and call him. He went back to, as I call it, the dark side, but because I'm a manufacturer, but for an installer, it's a lucrative side of the business, and I'm happy for him. But just to see somebody who has experienced all the different things that installation can bring you, he's another one of those success stories. And so, they're craftsmen, and that's what we need, is to get back to having craftsmen within the industry.
Right. And that's what they need to be referred to, something other than just installer.
Right.
So, well, and we've talked about this before. For installers, yeah, just some of the basic things that we want them to learn through NAFCT. It's not just your hand skills that you got to be fluent with. You've got to understand how to pay your taxes, right? You've got to understand how to run a business. You've got to understand how to save for your future. I use the story every time I talk. Nothing worse than losing a great installer because he didn't pay his taxes. So now you were short another installer. Or the other thing that drives me crazy is when I see a guy at a shop loading up to do a big job. He's 68, 69 years old, and he knows he's got to work every single day of his life that he can because he never saved a dime. Right? He didn't prepare. He didn't plan for the future. I was sharing that with a customer this week, and it's that kind of opened up the conversation within AFCT a little bit. And I could tell he was interested, couldn't really tell what he was doing. We ended up going to lunch. So like an hour later, he's like, that really hit home with me, talking about an installer working till the last day they can. My brother's like that. And he's like, it just clicked with him. I go, let's do what we can to not make that happen. And I think we got to support her because, that drives me crazy. So we lost you there for a minute, Paul.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. There's our leader.
I'm here. I heard all that. We should wrap this up. We're at our hour here. Brent, where can people find you?
Well, that's a tough one. You can find me through Roppe Holding Company. Email address bfike, Fike, at Roppe, ROPPE.com. Solutions at rhctechnical.com. Those are email addresses. As far as phone numbers, I don't necessarily want to give that out on this podcast, but if you dial 256-200-0433 and ask for Brent, you'll get him. That's kind of, I'm accessible, guys. Sonny, Paul, all you guys, make this happen. I appreciate what you're doing. All of our documentation, Roppe, Flexco, 6 Degrees, all has that email address on it. It all has a phone number. Get a hold of that and ask for me if you want to talk. guys, I'm here. I sit at this desk every day to help people and to further influence this industry. So want to give back and want to help as much as I can. So
Yep.
Thank you very much for joining us. Sonny, as always, Sonny at NAFCT.
Yep.
Anywhere else to
Yep.
find you?
Well, I was going to say that it was a funny story this week talking about how to get in touch with people. We were meeting with a contractor and they're like, well, if we have questions, who do we call? I go, my phone number is literally on every single pail of adhesive that I sell. That 1-877 number goes right to my cell phone. So there's no excuse for installers saying they can't get in touch with technical. Same with you. There's a phone number on every box that they open up, every invoice. So take the time. If you're asking somebody how to do something, nobody's going to look down their nose at you. They're going to be like, hey, this is great. This guy wants to do it right. And we'll have more respect for you than if you do it wrong and then come back to us. So,
yeah, I was just smart enough, Sonny, to put a number that goes directly to Rex on our pails. So.
Sexy Rexy.
Yep.
Well, on that note, thank you, gentlemen. We will be back maybe next week or the week after or whenever we get back for the next podcast. Things are a little busy now. Thanks, everybody, for listening or watching. We'll see you next
time. See you, Brent.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being on.
Bye.